Hello. So, the future of you skills development for tomorrow's world. Who knows what skills we're going to need in the future? Nobody?
Open mind.
Open mind. That's good. I don't know. I will hope to share with you today maybe a few thoughts, maybe give you some things to think about, both from a personal point of view, but also from your business's perspective as well. I want to start with a little story. So a few months ago, we moved house. We've been living in the old house for about 10 years and the house before for 10 years as well, so since I was about 4 years old. So like many people when we moved house, you know, we had about 20 boxes that were boxes when we moved into the house 10 years ago and were boxes in the house before, and we hadn't opened them in a long, long time. And we decided, okay, enough. Well, my wife decided that I needed to sort the boxes out. So we're going through all these boxes, and I had my children help me. I've got 2 young boys. And they were helping me go through the boxes. And in one of the boxes, there was an old mobile phone, a Nokia mobile phone from mid-1990s, I don't know, 95, 96. Probably my first mobile phone that I had. Unlike Colin, it wasn't, you know, mine wasn't this big. I'm a little bit younger than him, so it was a bit smaller. But I got this phone out, and my son, who is obsessed with telephones and iPads and everything, grabs hold of it and he starts looking at it. And he gets the phone and he's looking at the front and trying to switch it on. Of course, it didn't have any power. And he looks at the back and he's like, "How do you take pictures?" I said, "How do you take pictures?" He goes, "Well, we had a camera for that." He goes, "But I can't see." No, it was a separate camera. I said, "Oh, so you use a separate camera and then you could like swipe through all your pictures?" No, you took the film out after you'd taken 24 pictures. Film? Yeah, film. Thing. You walk to a shop, you give it to the shop, 2-3 days later you come back and they give you your pictures. Because they give you your pictures, so they put them on your iPad for you. No, they're pictures, they're like a piece of paper. He goes, "Oh, like a drawing?" Yeah, okay. Like a drawing. He says, "Okay, so does it do video? Can you take videos with it?" It's like, no, you have video cameras. They're about this big. And they're too expensive, so I never had one of those anyway. It's like, all right, so what can it actually do? What did you use this for? So you could talk to people. And he's like, "Oh, like when we Skype with Grandad." No, not Skype, actually talking like a telephone. And he's like, "Okay, don't really understand that. Okay, well, could you do anything else?" I said, yeah, you could send messages. It has this brilliant new feature on it called telefaxes. Okay, so Colin had paper faxes. I was on electronic faxes by the time I got my first phone. And he's like, "What's that? Is that like an email?" Not exactly, but you know, sort of similar to that. Sort of similar. He said, "So, you know, what about things like Snapchat? Could you do?" He's 7 and he knows I don't know what Snapchat is. He's like, "Snapchat, what's that? Do all of that?" No, none of that. So, well, what can it do? So you can just talk to people and send them messages? No, that's not all. So what else? So it had this brilliant feature. "Yeah, what's that?" He said, "It's a clock. I could tell the time." And he's like, "Really? That's it?" I said, "Time, messages, phone. It's a multifunctional device. It's perfect, just what you need." Bit of a silly story, but it kind of illustrates just how far technology has come. So my kids, they're both 7 years old. They are using iPads in schools. They know how to use mobile phones because they keep stealing my wife's mobile phone and using it. Everything is technology. Technology is integrated in everything they learn today. So the world has changed hugely in 20 years. You know, I left university 22 years ago. And my whole time at university, every assignment I had to do was written down on a piece of paper. We didn't even have, there were maybe 5 computers in the whole university for 10,000 students. So you just didn't have access to computers. You went to a library, you took notes on a piece of paper, and you wrote up your assignment on a piece of paper. It's all completely changed nowadays. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about what are some of the key skills that we're going to need to focus on in the future and how we can use technology, but not just technology, but how we're going to see technology play a role in the development of skills, and maybe share a little bit about what I think we need to be doing better in the future. So I'm going to start with a little bit of theory. Please try not to fall asleep, or if you do, just make sure it's the people at the back so I can't see you. When we're looking at what are some of the key skills, key attributes that people are going to need for the future, we at ACCA have come up with 7 different categories. These aren't all going to be new to you, but broadly speaking, you can categorize things in these 7 different ways. So we have technical skills and ethics. So really, you know, how you do the tasks you need to do. Having the skills to do those tasks, to do them consistently and to do them to the right standard. Pretty simple. The intelligence quotient, so about how you use the knowledge that you already have to solve problems. Okay? Creativity, this is about innovation. You know, we've got a theme today about innovation. Remaining at the forefront of innovation. This is where creativity comes in as well. It's using your knowledge, it's using your skills to think of new ideas, to innovate, to do something different, to gain that competitive advantage. Digital. If you don't understand digital, if you don't understand technology, sorry, you're going to struggle. Unless you get a job where all you have to do is come to conferences and talk to people and just tell them everything that they're doing wrong. That's much easier. You don't need to know much about technology then. You just press the big green button, you're fine. Emotional intelligence. This is about interpersonal skills, soft skills, how to talk to people. You know, we hear a lot about automation, robotics, RPA, how it's going to take everyone's jobs. It's not. It's really not. It's going to replace some tasks. Generally speaking, the tasks that most people don't really want to do anyway because they're pretty boring. But what it's not going to do is replace that human interaction, the ability to discuss, to debate, to challenge. That's always going to be needed. Until we reach a world where robots are selling things to other robots, if you don't have that interpersonal skills, it's not going to work. Businesses are not going to grow. You need vision. You need the ability to see what is potentially going to be changing in the world in the future. The companies that are able to change the quickest, or even better, the companies that are able to drive the change in global markets are the ones who are most successful. You know, I think Colin mentioned Steve Jobs before, but you know, Apple did a fantastic thing and has continued maybe until recently to do fantastic things. And they are giving products to the world that the world didn't even know they wanted or needed. When they launched the iPod or the iPhone, the world didn't know it needed these things. Yet look how many they sold. So that ability to anticipate what the future might look like, turn them into a, you know, almost $1 trillion company. And finally, experience. Okay, I don't just mean years and years of working, but the ability to experience different things, to be able to understand things from a different perspective, in particular a customer perspective in many businesses, whether it's an internal or external customer. And the ability to use that experience to create value. So these are some of the key skills that people are going to need. But how do we make sure that young people today are actually able to develop those skills? Just to put it in a little bit of context, very briefly, just go through a little bit of the history of how education has developed over time. So, learning started as experiential. So you learn by doing, you learn by seeing, you learn by copying. It's how babies learn. It's how young children learn how to talk. They hear their parents talking, and they repeat, and they repeat, and they repeat like little parrots. And after 2 years of it, it gets exceptionally annoying. And they just talk and talk and talk, and then you desperately want them to learn how to talk, and then you spend the next 15 years telling them to shut up. But that's how we learned for 200,000 years as humans. The first schools started to develop about 4,000 years ago in Egypt, probably. But it was elite, very elite. It was the royal family. They were educated, nobody else was. Maybe a few of the really wealthy. And that continued for many, many years and gradually grew broader and broader. We saw the first, what's termed universal education, around probably 500 years ago, where schools started that were actually available to everyone. They were not based on wealth, your position in society. I say everyone who was male, of course, because women weren't allowed to go to school 500-600 years ago. That took another 300-400 years, sadly. But those were the first start of education becoming a bit more universal. A lot more recently, we've moved into a world where education became more supplemental. So your education was not just about sitting in a classroom and what you learned in the classroom. You were expected to do work outside of the classroom. I'm not just talking about written homework, but things like projects, investigating things, finding out, learning for yourself. And technology started to come in that could help play a role in that. Much more recently, we moved into integral learning, where technology is an absolute fundamental part of learning. Without technology, you simply can't learn. Certainly in the UK, where I'm from originally, or in the Netherlands, where I live now, technology is absolutely compulsory in the schools. When I send my kids to school, this year for the first year, I was told I have to buy them a laptop at 7 years old. Because they can't do their work at school without a laptop. The challenge, of course, is explained to them that doesn't mean at home they can just, play Minecraft for 17 hours a day. But apparently that's my problem, not the schools. But learning has become much more blended. It's about a mix of that human interaction and the use of technology. We're actually also at a stage, maybe, if we look at more professional development and learning, where learning is now fully flexible. You don't have to go to a classroom ever. A good friend of mine has just started studying for an MBA. And in his MBA, he's never met anyone studying his MBA. Never met any of the other students. You go off, you work on projects, you do dissertations, you do research. Once a week they have a webinar discussion, video, online. He's in a group, he's living in the Netherlands. He's got 2 other people in his work group. One's in Mexico, one's in Singapore. And they're collaborating on projects. Time zones are a bit of a challenge, but apart from that, it's perfectly feasible with the technology today. So it's fully flexible. You can study what you want, where you want, when you want it, using whatever device you choose to. But where are we going to go from there? What's next? Sounds like we've got everything we need, right? All the technology's there. So nothing more to change. Not exactly. So here are some of the potential trends that we think we're going to see in the future. Some of these have already started and will happen. Some of them have not yet. Some of them are a little bit scary. Genetic selection, pharmaceutical enhancement. That means taking drugs to make yourself smarter. But just to quickly go through a few of these, and I'll focus more on the ones that we think are more likely to become widespread. So let's start with artificial intelligence. Everyone knows what artificial intelligence is, right? To a point. Did you know artificial intelligence is already being used in education? Did you know it's already being used to a point where it's providing faster, better learning opportunities than classroom teachers? Are there any Americans in the room? I don't see any. If there are, I apologize in advance. In true American fashion, the US Navy has developed an artificial intelligence for training its IT engineers. The really American bit is they've called it education dominance. Okay, nice aggressive term for education. But this is an artificial intelligence that they're using for training. And they have done studies, and they had 3 groups of people who were fresh recruits into the Navy, did not have an IT background, and they were training them on IT engineering. It was a 5-week course. One group, it was 5 weeks in the classroom with the US Navy IT tutors. Very, very good people, very skilled teachers. Been doing it for many, many years, lots of expertise. The second group did blended learning, which is something we see a lot of now. So some online learning through online courses that the Navy's developed, and some classroom learning as well. The third group purely used education dominance. So purely this AI, that by the way had learnt from the tutors, from the classroom tutors a couple of months earlier. At the end of the 5 weeks, they did a test. It was a rigorous test. I think it was like 4 or 5 hour test. So, not 20 questions, but a proper thing. The students who learned on AI performed 40% better than the other two groups. Okay, so this technology exists. It cost them about $4 billion to develop, so I'm not suggesting you go out and do that today in your company, but it's there and it's coming, and of course the cost's going to come down. So AI is going to be here. It's not going to replace all the tutors, okay? It's not going to work for all skills. But learning technical skills, absolutely. Absolutely, this is something that can work. Has anyone heard of adaptive learning? Couple of people. My sons are using adaptive learning at school. So adaptive learning is software that paces itself to the user's needs and changes the content based on the user's needs. My sons basically learnt to read using an iPad and adaptive learning software. Okay, they're learning to do maths in the same way. So I talk about this as technology of the future. It's actually there and it's being used in primary schools. It's being used with young children already. Okay, it's fantastic. It makes being a parent so much easier. I don't have to sit there and listen to them read every night. It's wonderful. I can just, have a beer and watch TV while they're on the iPad. It's perfect parenting, perfect parenting. Great for the interpersonal relationship with your children, No, but it's incredibly effective. It's incredibly effective, and it's working really, really well. And we are starting to see that more come into the business world. It's a bit more complex to do that, but that ability to tailor learning to an individual specific need, frankly, it's something that teachers have been crying out for years. Both my parents were teachers. They're both retired now. They were both teachers. And they used to tell me that the hardest thing they found as a teacher, if you've got a class of 20, 25 children that you're teaching, some of them are going to be better than others. Some of them are going to be more advanced than others. How do you, as a teacher, cope with all those different levels? Well, unfortunately, in education, what you do is you teach to the middle. So the people at the top get bored, the people at the bottom struggle. And it's not a sustainable solution. It's not good for the students. This is where adaptive learning is helping. It's not a replacement. It's an additional tool that can be used in learning. We then see things like immersive simulations. So I bet most of you have probably played business games, right? I've done so many business games over the years. Typically, they've got things like getting Lego out or, a bit of Monopoly, something like that in a business context. Business games now have gone a step further. They're essentially computer games. So if you think of an example. So if you think about a basic, like a flight simulator game, okay, or I don't know if any of you play like SimCity or something like that, okay? Some of these games are sort of simulations. This takes it to another level. It's similar, but it's going beyond that. So it's really focusing on the business content. But it's a great way of learning. It's a great way of learning, especially for people who maybe have a limited attention span, because it's engaging. It keeps people occupied. And it can be fun. A few of these have now started coming out as well, and they're getting better and better over time also. Genetic selection, genetic engineering. Can you imagine programming your DNA or your children's DNA to make it more likely that they can learn things and succeed? Anyone think that's a good idea? Be honest. Be honest. I'm not sure. The selfish part of me, excuse me, I'm like Colin's CEO tapping the mic. The selfish part of me says, wouldn't it be nice to give my children an advantage? The more reasonable part of me says, that's really scary because where does it stop? But I promise you, it won't be too long before someone's doing this or trying to do this. In my view, I hope the legal framework keeps up so it doesn't actually happen, but it's certainly a possibility. What's potentially more likely to come is actual pharmaceutical enhancement, so using drugs in education and learning. This is not something new. I'm not going to ask to put, I was going to ask how many of you are familiar with LSD. That's probably not how I should phrase the question. But when LSD was developed in the 50s in, I can't remember, university in the US, can't remember if it was Berkeley or one of the other big universities, but when LSD was first developed, it was developed as a drug that was supposed to improve people's awareness, consciousness, help them learn, help them focus on tasks. Kind of went a bit down a slightly different road in the end. But this idea of trying to develop and use drugs to help education and learning is nothing new. And I'll tell you now, there are companies researching this still today. This is going to happen. This will happen sooner or later. I think, again, it's something we have to be very, very careful about, and I'm not necessarily saying that I feel particularly comfortable with that idea, but this is one of the other trends that we're seeing. But what does this mean for you in a personal context and also in a workplace? Firstly, don't give your staff LSD, please. I think that would be a very, if that's your takeaway from today, that could be horrific, and I'll never be invited back. But what you need to do as an organization is you need to embrace most of these future ways of learning. Okay? You need to think about how you're going to adapt your training programs within your organization. You cannot rely on schools and universities to do this for you. Yes, they are doing this. They are moving in that direction. But making that change, it's not a small one. It will take 5, 10, 15 years to do that by the time students come out who've been through this. As I say, my kids are 7. They're not going to be entering the workforce for another 15 years. If you want to wait that long for them, and you've got some opportunities, let me know. I'd like to get them. At the moment, one of them just wants to build robots to build other robots so he can sit down and make lots of money. And the other one wants to hunt for dinosaurs because he thinks they're real. So if you have good opportunities, please let me know. You need to think about these new models. You need to think about how to start using them within your workplace. You need to think about investing. Not the billions of dollars it might cost for AI, but investing even in a small way in your staff. One of the things that drives me absolutely crazy when I talk to companies about training and education, and sorry, I see it a lot in Romania, is that companies say, yeah, okay, I'm prepared to offer training to my staff, but if they leave within 12 months, I'm going to make them pay it all back. Okay, so you'd rather force somebody who doesn't want to work for you to stay working for you. That doesn't sound great to me, but okay. And if you think that's the right thing, and by the way, you don't really think that your company is good enough to retain them anyway after that 1 year? I mean, if they're leaving, there's a problem, right? You'll see companies saying, well, we'll pay for your study, but if you fail an exam, you're going to have to pay back the cost of the exam. 100 euros, like an exam with us costs 100 euros. A company says, if you fail, you're going to pay me back that 100 euros. As an employee, you know what I think? Okay, so I'm worth less than 100 euros to you. Thanks. It's not the right message. If you truly believe that you want to develop your staff, and you're going to need to because future skills are becoming harder and harder to find on the marketplace. You cannot go out and hire 30 RPA experts tomorrow. I challenge you to try and do so. You cannot. It's just not going to happen. You've got to work on developing those skills, okay? But you also need to think about a sustainable solution. It's not about the next 6 months. It's not about next year. It's 5 years, 10 years. How are you going to go for the future? So, your approach to learning and development for your staff, it needs to be comprehensive. It needs to cover all the potential demands that you can see. It needs to be innovative. You need to embrace new technology, new ways of doing business, new ways of learning. And finally, it needs to be focused on the individuals. Because if you develop your staff in the right way, your companies are going to succeed. Thank you.